Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and we're back again today with another Spirit Island video. So when learning and teaching this game to other people, I like to think about the motivations of the spirit that we're playing. What does that spirit want to do? Every spirit has their own kind of minigame that they want to play, their own unique approach towards winning the game. And I think that's the secret sauce to really what makes Spirit Island such a great game. I oftentimes will compare this game to Pandemic for people when I'm trying to get them to give it a try. And I think the problem with Pandemic is that everyone starts in the exact same place and everyone basically does the exact same thing. Yeah, like some players are marginally better at specific actions than other players are, but it's largely pretty much the sameness. Now, in Spirit Island, there is such a wild range of abilities and powers and motivations and play styles that it feels like you're playing a completely different game going from one spirit to the next. So right here in front of me, we have 29 spirits that are currently available to be played. And yes, there's more when you consider the different aspects that exist. But later on this year, Nature's Incarnate's going to come out, and they have 8 new spirits there, so that'll bring us up to 37. And there's going to be 20 new aspects. And so in total, there'll be 68 different ways to play the game. We'll have to see how different the different aspects are. Like, for example, Shadows Flicker Like Flame Base versus Shadows Flicker Like Flame Reach is largely the same. It's just that Reach is a little more straightforward. You know, you could say that Sharp Fangs Unconstrained, the only aspect that we've seen so far, is basically the same as Sharp Fangs, which is some minor tweaking. It doesn't feel like a completely new spirit. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I would not categorize that as a completely new spirit. It's just basically like a balance patch. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. The point is that there is a ton of different ways to play the game, and that can be really confusing. You know, if you're not a very active player, you know, if you don't play this game every day, you might just never pick up a spirit for a year of owning the game. And so you're going to be constantly over and over and over again having to learn new spirits. Every time you sit down, you might need to go through the whole process of learning a spirit again. And so finding a way to make that learning process more intuitive is important. And I think the best way to do that is through the theme of the spirit. Most recently, we had the 5 new spirits from Horizon, which I've got here on the edges. And they were all low complexity, but even though they were low complexity, their goals and motivations were quite apparent. Okay, we had a couple raw attackers, okay, and Rising Heat and Devouring Teeth, and you can see on their summary of powers, they both top out on offense. You had a defender, Eyes Watch from the Trees, tops out with defense, and then we had a control push spirit with Sunbright Whirlwind. The only spirit that's not extremely intuitive without ever having playing them is Fathomless Mud, and we can see the summary of powers is pretty flat across the board, so it's kind of a generalist. But even after you play him once, you can get a sense of like the goals and the motivations of the spirit, right? We want to use that special rule to make it such that there's only going to be explorers. We prevent buildings from ever existing in the first place. And then we have a lot of like 1 damage abilities or like push 2 explorers in order to control those explorers that there's going to be a lot of on the board. So it's less direct, but you know, we get a sense of the game plan. Even after one play. Now, if there's one spirit that has no game plan whatsoever, that would be Starlight Seeks Its Form. You know, it might be a little hyperbolic to say no game plan, but, I mean, let's be fair. This spirit really doesn't have a predetermined goal before the game starts. It's more you got to figure it out as you go along. So, let's take a look at what this spirit can do. In the words of my buddy Spaz when he first saw the spirit panel, what the actual fuck am I looking at? So let's break it down. The first thing that everyone notices is the fact that we have 4 additional lines to add presence. And these all give you additional growth options. So basically, once you clear all the presents off of one of these tracks, you will pick one of these 2 growth options, and you will permanently gain that growth option, and you will permanently lose access to the other one. So here digitally, it gives you these spare pieces. You can just choose to cover up which one that you're not going to use, and these spare pieces do come in the game as well, in the physical copy of the game. Some people on digital will just like use the draw tool and like scribble out whatever one they're not going to use, but I just like to use these spare pieces. I think there's a beautiful symmetry to these 4 different growth options that we have here. You see 2 of them have only 1 presence that needs to be added before you gain access to them, and 2 of them have 2. These 2s also give you an extra 1 energy per presence placement, so that way you don't feel so bad about taking this first one off. Half of the growth options give you another card, whereas the other half give you an extra card play. Half of them let you move presence, and half of them give you extra energy. Half of them let you reclaim cards. So there's a lot of balance in the way that these growth options work, and so you could try different combinations of results, and you can broadly wind up in the same place, and then it comes down to a little bit of like min-maxing. But taking a look at them line by line, this top one is the only one that I feel like is not particularly competitive between the 2 choices, reclaiming half rounded up versus gaining a power card and moving a presence. Reclaiming half in the early game is going to be like reclaim 2, sometimes reclaim 3. And there's going to be some cards you might not want. Like obviously it's better than reclaim 1, but how much better is it? In the late game, when you finally are up to like 10 cards, reclaim 5 looks really nice. But up until that point, where in that late game you're gaining a ton of cards, I feel like I would just rather have gain a new power card every single turn up until that point, because without using this growth option just loses value. So I think this is the only growth option of all these lines that is directly like you always take the gain a power card option. I've never seen a reason to take reclaim half, and when I asked people online, there was not really any strong defense of it, but that's all right. You gotta gain power cards, and every spirit wants that. But looking at this second line, we have gain 3 energy versus gain a card play and move a presence. So this is a really interesting one. Both of these are incredibly powerful, and the fact that it's locked behind only 1 presence turns out this is the one that I always hold on to for as long as I possibly can, because I kind of think of this as like, are you going for majors or are you going for minors? If you're going for majors, you need that spike in energy, then you want to take that. Whereas if you're going for minors and you just want to get more card plays, well, you have an option for that. Going into the late game, even if you are going for majors, maybe you have plenty of energy and you just need to like play more cards. Maybe you want to play an extra major. So you could go for majors and still go for the extra card play, or maybe you're on a really thin build, like maybe you stayed at 1 energy all game and you just need that bigger jump in energy in order to play all the cards that you've already got access to. So this one is super flexible, and this one is basically 50-50 for me, whichever one I go for in any of my games. This next line, the choice is between reclaim all cards versus gain a power card and gain an energy. Now, for me, I pretty much always go for the reclaim all cards option. However, I do think that it is worth pointing out that there's a really fun build that you can do with Starlight, where you would take this gain a power card action and this gain a power card action, and it's called the Casino Starlight build. So basically every turn you just gain 2 cards, and no matter what you gain, you play them. And it's really chaotic and it's really hard to be predictable with it, but it's also incredibly fun because no one knows what's going to happen. This is a great build just for fun if you're not like trying to knock down, like the hardest adversary you've ever played, or if you're playing at a much lower difficulty than you normally would, like maybe you're teaching someone the game and you just want to have a little bit of fun and YOLO, then yeah, just gain 2 random cards off the top of the deck, throw them down, and see if you can pull a win out of nowhere. But that's not usually what I go for, so I usually go for this reclaim all cards option. But gaining a power card and gaining an energy is incredibly powerful. So it's like this is a sweet power, and the only reason that I wouldn't take it every game is because it's pitted up against reclaim cards. So this is the line that I think of in terms of reliability versus chaos. In this last line, we have do 2 damage at range 0 versus an extra card play this turn and make one of your powers fast. So it's like, do you want to be a budget version of Wildfire or a budget version of Lightning Swift Strike? Both of these are obviously quite powerful. The 2 damage at range 0, it's usually going to be like kill a town, in the growth phase, but it could be kill explorers to prevent builds. It could be in combination. Maybe you have a couple Badlands cards already, then that could start picking off cities or something even bigger. The extra card play, make one of your powers fast, is not so strong in the early game, because if you're playing all those extra cards in the early game, then you are more likely to have to go for reclaims, and when you have less cards, your reclaims are less valuable. So there's a little bit of negative tension between those two, but in the late game, this is a lot stronger, whereas in the late game, 2 damage at range 0 is a lot weaker. So this is another really interesting growth option choice where, are you trying to gain that early game tempo, picking up extra damage and doing all these extra actions, or in the late game where pretty much any card that you play is going to be better than 2 damage at range 0. Like in the late game, you're probably going to be throwing down some giant major, like, I don't know, let's say you have like a Tsunami in your hand. Well, playing Tsunami fast is insane. With that extra card play, you're basically always going to be able to threshold it. So you're looking at 16 damage and 4 fear fast. Insanely powerful, right? So I like to think of this one as the early game tempo versus the late game just raw power choice. So that's just a quick look at the 4 different growth options you can gain. There's a lot of flexibility here, and you can use this to accent your own personal play style. And I think this flexibility is part of the reason why Starlight is so universally loved, because no matter what you like to do, you can build Starlight in such a way that it accomplishes that goal. But underneath these 4, we have a standard energy and plays track. At the end of the day, with every spirit, the game basically breaks down to gain energy, play cards, and do things with those cards. So it can be really sexy and exciting to try and pick up all these cool growth options and do all kinds of crazy things, but you can only pick 3, right? And one of them is basically always going to be out of presence. So realistically, if you choose to go into here, you're only ever going to be able to do 2 a turn. And there's 4, right? So let's say you spend all of your early presence picking up all 4 of these, you're only ever going to use 2 of them in a turn. So it's like we're investing all of this stuff into something we're not even going to use. So I think it's a little bit of a trap to try and have all of these great, crazy choices in the early game, because you're not going to use them. So what's the point? Whereas here in the bottom track, we can just make ourselves just better. Have more energy, have more card plays, so that we can just do more things without any weird tricks. But if you pay attention, half of these slots is for elements, right? It does not increase your energy, it does not increase your card plays. And this is the other major choice that comes to playing Starlight. And that is, these elements is anything of your choosing. At the time that you reveal one of these elements, you get to pick any of the elements of your choice. Let's say we're going for water, and then you can just lock it in, and it's basically as if it was pre-printed there, just like any other spirit would have pre-printed elements on their tracks. So there are 3 of those options here on the bottom, and there's actually 1 more here on this growth line 3. So in total, there are 4 elements that we can add, and there's 4 more growth options we can add. So over the course of the game, we have 8 decision points to make with Starlight in order to customize our build. So what do elements actually do? on every spirit, elements really only do two things. They give you access to innates, and they let you threshold majors. Now, yes, there are a couple events that care about elements, but there's so few of them and you can't plan for them, it's really not worth paying attention to. So, like, I would not want to take a worse path because I was hoping that there'd be like that 1 in 50 chance of this one specific event card coming up, and I want to be a little bit better off for it. It's not, it doesn't make sense. So, instead, we want to focus on our game plan, focus on the mages we want to play, and the innates we want to use. So obviously, we're going to be talking about the innates next. Starlight is quite unique in that it has an innate for every single element. And the value of these innates go up or down based on the adversary that we're playing against. And this is where Starlight has really no bad matchups. Because some spirits, just because of the way that they are, may have great matchups and may have bad matchups. Like, for example, Wildfire is going to have a bad matchup against England 5. Wildfire is really good at dealing 2 damage, right? Because every time you grow, you can deal 2 damage because of your 2 fires at the beginning of your tracks. Well, England 5 says that your towns have 3 health, so 2 damage doesn't actually do anything. So, that's a really, really bad matchup. Consider also someone like, Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares against Scotland. Scotland has the most fear cards of any of the adversaries, so when you're playing someone like Bringer, who the only way that he can win is through fear, that just becomes so much harder. But Starlight can adapt, right? Maybe against England 5, with that extra health, we don't go for, dealing damage in 2 damage chunks, right? This 2 damage at range 0, we just don't take this option. We can adapt, we can mold, but let's just hop straight into it. Instead of going from top to bottom, I'm going to start with the moon, because every single one of our starting cards has only moon on it. We start with 2 card plays. So on turn 1, we will have 2 moons. That'll give us access to our 2 moons innate. And then also the 3 moons is basically the same thing, but a little bit better. But yeah, let's start with the moons. So it allows you to gather an explorer or a town. And they're basically, this is good against some adversaries and a lot less good against other adversaries. The question to ask is, if we start with an empty land and then that land explores, can we remove that first explorer and then completely prevent the blight from happening? And against 3 adversaries, that answer is yes. Okay, against Brandenburg, Prussia, against Russia, and against Sweden. We remove that explorer, and then no blight will happen. Against England, against Habsburg, right, they have ways of circumventing that issue. So England will build regardless. Habsburg will gather a town in, so it'll still blight. And then Scotland is conditional, right? Like, it will work on the inlands, but on the coast, right, we can't use this as our plan. And then France adds 2 explorers. So gathering only 1 explorer, it'll still build, right? Like, we're still better off. We prevented a whole town from existing, but we don't prevent everything just by gathering 1 single explorer. Thankfully, against those other adversaries where removing that first explorer will not solve all our problems, this can also be used to gather a Han, so we can set ourselves up a little bit better that way. Now, when we get into the 3 moons, this does shore up our problems against France because those additional explorers will also be picked up, but everything else largely remains the same. So this is one of those 50-50s. Against half the adversaries it's useful, and half of them it's not. And I actually think that's like really good, smart balance. We don't like having something that's just good against every adversary, no matter the situation. Basically drives the spirit in that direction. What's also interesting about this moon one is just because there is a 2 moon level, oftentimes we'll just accidentally gain access to this innate when we're focusing on something else, just because the 2 cards that we played both splash moon as well. But then going from the top to the bottom. So next we have the wind innate. So here with the wind innate, it can be very similar to the moon in that it moves, explores, and it prevents builds. So all of the things I already said about moon applies here, but I also want to mention that because it can do 2 explorers or a town, it's more reliably good against France and Scotland. Scotland, you can use this to move the town off the coast. Even if Scotland's looking to build on the coast, we prevent a city from existing, which is the Scotland loss condition. So the wind is basically the same as the moon, but basically just better. The only downside to the wind is that it's actually paired with the earth. And the situation where you're going to want to use both of them in the same land is actually pretty narrow. So the earth is defend 5. This is a universally powerful innate. Some would say that this is the best of all of the innates, but it is obviously weaker against Sweden and Russia, where they do extra damage with their ravages. Also, Habsburg 6 gives you extra damage in your ravages, so it can be less effective there as well. If you have both the wind and the earth, it's the same power, has to target the same land. So the only way to gain full value from the wind and the earth is if the ravage is coming down for exactly 7 or 8 damage, at which point, pushing away 2 damage worth and then defending for 5 will prevent the blight. But that's a really narrow use case. And so that's the only reason why between the two, the earth is more universally valuable. So earth is more popular than wind. Now, if you go for the wind and you don't care about the earth, or you just don't get any earth cards, then wind is fantastic, right? The power plays completely differently, and it's just fantastic. Moving now to this next line, right? We've got fire, okay, fear, 2 damage. That's not a ton for an innate. I think really the power of the damage from the fire is the fact that you have to play a lot of fire cards, and fire cards tend to also do damage. So this is really just more of the same of the general game plan that you already got by going for fire. It's pretty much good against everything. Against England, 2 damage will not kill a town, so you have to use this in conjunction with your other cards in order to overcome the extra health on their buildings. But otherwise, it's just damage. It's universally good. It's not overpowered, but you're never going to be sad when you have the extra fire. At worst, you can pick off some explorers, pick off a random town. You can always find ways to make use of a fear and 2 damage. Against the water, removing a blight. Removing a blight is one of those things that's not inherently insane, but it's not bad against any adversary. The only adversary they really don't want this effect is France, just because of France 5. Removing blight is just a lot less effective since it doesn't go back onto the blight card. But I think one matchup that this is particularly powerful is against Russia, because with all the other adversaries, you could just let a land blight and then it's ignorable for the next 2 or 3 turns. Whereas against Russia, with that triple explorer, they're going to blight every single turn. So having access to reliable blight removal every single turn allows us to not freak out about the fact that they have this consistent, reliable ravage. If you're playing as Russia 6, it punishes you if you do not take blight. So this is a way that you can just eat a blight every single turn, never get hurt by that Russia 6, and then you can, just kind of scale up and focus on all your other problems. Maybe you just control everything on the board, but leave one single land perpetually ravaging, and you just perpetually remove the blight until you can find some solution to that land. It is worth noting, because these are on the same power, it does work to our advantage against Habsburg. So you will do 2 damage to the town will die, and then you remove the blight, which then would normally, give the town extra health. But just because the way that's written, with the fire above the water, it comes to our advantage. If it was reversed, the way I understand the rules, the blight would be removed first, and then the damage would happen, at which point you would have a durable town with 2 health. Next, we have the plant. And this is the only way that Starlight can provide support for other spirits. and that is by giving them additional power cards. It is worth noting that this targets a land, and it has to have a spirit with presence in that land. It's not target another spirit, it's target a land where there is presence. So let's say that you had a 6-player game and all the boards, you're doing the single coast setup, so it's a really long board. You're probably only going to be able to target 2 or 3 other spirits with this power. The other guy on the complete opposite end of the island, not going to be in range. So you will not be able to give them cards. But every spirit in the game loves to get new cards, right? Like I said before, at the end of the day, Spirit Island is about playing cards. So if you have more cards, you can play more cards. It's particularly powerful if you have a choice between various spirits. It's particularly nice if you can use this to help a spirit delay a reclaim by 1 turn. For pretty much every spirit, reclaiming is the worst of all of their growth options. So if you can delay that reclaim 1 additional turn, it basically lets them ride that higher wave for 1 extra turn, become that much more powerful going into their reclaim turn. Maybe that extra presence they added gives them more energy, gives them extra card play. It makes their reclaim more effective. Now, we go from the universally best, in my opinion, this is the best of all the innates, to the one that I feel is the weakest or the worst. And that is the animal one, deal 1 damage per Dahan, or push 3 Dahan. For the damage portion, you're really only looking at 2, sometimes 3 damage. But the push is, quite useful, quite nice. And that's really the way that I tend to use this power, but I don't use it very often. The problem with the push is that pushing Dahan by itself isn't really a game plan to win, but we can couple the animal with the earth and use that as a means to win, setting up the Dahan in a land that's about to ravage, defending the land, and that can be our offense. Though really the only way that you can gain reliable value from the damage portion is if you have some other kind of card that lets you move Dahan. Then you can move the Dahan into a land of your choosing and then do damage there. A power that comes to mind for that would be Call to Migrate. Right? It has the animal, lets you move 3 Dahan pretty far, right? Gather and then push. Right, so you have a lot of control with the Dahan, and then you can do 3 damage, pick off a city or something like that. But otherwise, I don't really like this one. I don't use it all too often. It is worth noting that because these are coupled with the same power, in order to gain full value from both the thresholds, you would need to have a land with Dahan and another spirit's presence all in the same land, all within range. Then you could get value from both. But if you don't have a land that matches both of them, I'd pretty much always choose to use the plant innate over the animal innate. And so that's also part of the reason why the animal is just less powerful. And then last but not least is this sun innate. This is the only one that costs 4 elements. All the rest cost 3, with moon having that single 2 cost just for early game balance reasons. But this one costs 4. And this does everything except for affect the board. 3 fear, gain an energy, and reclaim a card. If you can pick up this one, it basically is a win condition by itself. However, because it costs 4 elements, and we top out at 3 card plays, that obligates us to gain sun elements, gain the extra card plays. It takes a lot more effort to get to this innate. But if you can, it's just insane, right? It is a win condition in and of itself. So anyways, altogether we have the different growth options, we have the elements that we can gain, we have all the different innates that we can go for. There's so many ways to manipulate and change the way the spirit plays. It can be incredibly intimidating. Because of the malleability that comes with the spirit, you have no bad matchups. Okay. You also don't overwhelmingly dominate any matchup, although I find that the Sweden matchup is very good. Your opening hand is very good against Sweden, being able to skip Ravages, which is when Sweden's their strongest, and then moving Explorers with the Moon. But besides Sweden, I would say every matchup is, a good fight. So I usually talk about the adversaries, but it's hard to really discern exactly what we're going to do against any adversary. We don't have any inherent built-in powers besides that Sweden matchup. And then I normally like to also talk about spirits that are really nice to pair with Starlight, but the way that Starlight interacts with other spirits is by giving them more power cards. And every spirit likes free powers. But what I want to draw some attention to is Boon of Reimagining. So this lets a spirit gain 2 minor power cards out of a group of 6, but to do so they have to forget a power card. And there's some spirits that have one of their starting unique cards is just bad, and so they would be really happy to be targeted with Boon of Reimagining, because forgetting a bad power card is basically no cost, right? They can just get rid of that and then basically just gain 2 new cards for free. 2 spirits that come to mind when I say that would be Lightning Swift Strike and Wildfire. So Lightning Swift Strike would be the Raging Storm, and Wildfire has Flash Fires, right? 2 cards that are both a little overcosted for what they do. They both would love to be targeted with Boon of Reimagining, especially Lightning, because giving them the 2 extra cards basically puts them 2 turns ahead in terms of like their reclaim loop, helping them gain enough cards in hand such that they can still be effective while growing. So definitely, if there's one spirit in the game to pair Starlight with, it would absolutely be Lightning Swift Strike. But really, every spirit in the game is happy to pair with this guy. So normally when I make these videos, I've already pre-planned what matchup I'm going to play, who I'm going to play against, a general kind of game plan, maybe some kind of thing that I want to focus our attention on for teaching purposes. But because the theme of Starlight is that you can do anything and you can adjust to any situation, I have not picked anything yet. So we're just going to do a random matchup, difficulty 7 or 8, and no matter what we get, we're going to play it and we're going to have to figure it out. And we get Sweden 5. All right, cool. Well, I was just saying that this is a good matchup for Starlight, and so now I can demonstrate why that is. So as a reminder for some things that we were talking about before, now that we know we're against Sweden, we have considerations as to which elements are going to be stronger or weaker. So the ones that are going to be a little bit weaker, okay, Defend 5 loses a lot of value against Sweden, and then Remove Blight also loses value, because if they hit for 6 and they had 2 Blight, yeah, removing a Blight is nice, but it doesn't solve the land. Pushing the Dahan is going to be a lot weaker as well, because Sweden can eat the Dahan, so there might not be enough Dahan on the board to do anything with. Whereas the Moon is going to be incredibly powerful. Moving a single Dahan in the early game is nice. Preventing builds with the Moon is really nice as well. So let's see what happens. Okay, we're going to start with the Sands, and then Royal backing the Mountains. All right. So I like to use 3 more of these spare pieces, and I just flip them over to represent the 3 actions during growth every turn. It can be really easy to forget whether or not you've done things, especially in the later game when there's so much going on. So I really highly recommend having 3 pieces of some kind that are, different from the ones, here. Some players will grab a color presence that isn't in the game and then put those 3 colored presents on the board to represent the 3 actions they've taken every turn. Whatever works for you. There's a little bit of bookkeeping that you're going to want to do with Starlight, or else you're going to struggle. But anyways, let's just get right into it. So for first growth, we're going to add a presence, and I'm going to go top track. And we're going to choose to gain a power card. And now here we have our first choice. So some things to think about. First, we have to care about what does the card text actually say, And then second, we have to consider if the elements that this card offers is something that we actually want. So we can only take one of these, so we don't need to think about like combinations of cards. But we already said that the elements that we care less about would be things like animal and water and earth. So this says animal water. Okay, so blood draws predators, right? Nice fire sun card, really. But it doesn't do anything by itself. This is the kind of card that I would take if we already had a nice fire build, and this is a way to gain extra damage on top of it. So this card I'm ruling out. Okay, next we have Dark and Tangled Woods, defend 3. It's very weak against Sweden. The only thing that can realistically defend is exactly an explorer town. This gives us Earth, which is something we care less about. It's restricted on where it can target. The moon and the plant is really nice, but just because the defend 3 itself is so weak, and we're looking at sands right now, so it gives us no immediate value. Okay, we're going to skip this guy too. Thriving Choke Fungus. So this is another moon plant card. It doesn't do anything by itself, but disease is really good against Sweden because that's like a defend 3, a defend 5. And then Badlands is really nice as well, allows us to, play a little bit of aggression. So this is certainly one that I'm considering. And then Devouring Ants deals, if we're to use this in the sands, right, where we know we have sands coming up, we can deal 2 damage and a fear. So this we could take this and get immediate value, right? We could target this land here. However, it does also kill a Dahan, so that's a little bit less exciting. This one feels like a little bit more of a narrow use. So I'm going to choose to take Thriving Choke Fungus. But this card, it's good, but it's not insane. This is kind of just like a utility card. It's not enough to build a real game plan around. So I'm not necessarily going to be married to this card. We very well could forget this. So that's 2 growth options. We get to move a presence. So I'm going to make sure that we can get a sacred site next to everything on the island. So we're going to go this way with it. My game plan to deal with this Sands 4 is just to Piece of the Nighttime Sky. There's no way we're going to defend that. Okay, and then we're going to gain an energy for our 3rd option. And our standard first turn is going to be Boon of Reimagining plus Shape the Self anew. And here we go. So we have nothing in the fast, skip the first event, builds, and explore the wetlands. All right, great. So the first thing we're going to want to do on our turn is to use our Moon Innate. If we use Shape the Self anew, we can forget it to gain energy. And we're definitely going to want to do that because this is not the kind of card we're going to want to play more than once. But if we forget it, we lose the moon. So that means that, we lose access to the innate. So let's get the innate right now. This lets us gather and explore. And I'm going to choose to gather this way. This will prevent this from building and will give us a little bit more breathing room. Then we're going to gain a minor power and then forget this to gain 3 energy. Okay, so far we are in Moon Water Plant, but this is only 1 card, right? There's no reason for us to get married to this card. For Boon of Reimagining, we have to forget a card from hand in order to use it. So we very well might just forget this Thriving Choke Fungus if something here just looks better. So let's look at this first in terms of matching elements, and then we're just going to consider anything. So in terms of matching elements, the Moon Water Plant, okay, we've got Moon Water here with the Pull Beneath. I can't draw lines anymore. Anyways, Pull Beneath is a card that's worth considering to match 2 elements. We do also have Moon with Unquenchable Flames. And then for Plant, we have Carapace Land, which does provide some nice defense. If we can pick up the second Earth, we could, or actually we don't even need the second Earth, here in number 7, this immediately defends and solves this problem. If we pick up the second Earth, Defend 6 would also work fantastic here. And having to only get into 2 Earth as opposed to investing a 3rd Earth, we could use this as like a small time solution, and then gives us the option to flex into Earth if we want to. It's also worth noting with Carapace Land, it gives us both Earth and Animal, which Earth and Animal together is a game plan towards victory. And then we have Confounding Mists, which also gives us the water. Of course, water is the least important of the 3 elements available on Choke Fungus. And the defend value is lower than what Carapace Land has to offer, so I'm a lot less excited about it. And it also costs 1. So I'm looking at these 3 on the right. Carapace Land is the one that I'm thinking I'm just going to snap up because it is good completely by itself. Like, we could just go into other elements, play this card once or twice, and then forget it, and we'd still be in a perfectly fine place. Whereas this requires a little bit of setup. Unquenchable Flames kind of wants a little bit more going on. Pull Beneath the Hungry Earth. If we hadn't gathered this Explorer out, we could take Pull Beneath to kill the town that would build. But as of right now, this doesn't really do anything for us. So I'm going to take Carapace Land. Okay. I'm going to hold on to both of these, right? This gives us the option of going into Plant, which is incredibly powerful. So for Boon of Reimagining, I'm going to forget Gather the Scattered Light of Stars. This lets us basically delay Reclaim. So by forgetting this card, we're going to have to go into Reclaim, or we're going to have to grow towards our Reclaim option, but that's fine. On TTS, if you right-click, gain a minor, it'll give you 6. And then if you right-click, pick power, it'll add it to your hand without removing the rest of the cards. So now, here is like the big decision of the game. Because we get to take 2 of these cards, there's basically 15 different combinations of cards that we can take. So we can take a look at these relative to just themselves. We can also take a look at these relative to the cards that we already took. There is a huge decision tree to be made here. And so this is definitely probably the slowest turn you're going to have considering all the different options available. But let's take a look, right? So the first thing that I'm going to look at is what 2 cards here can I use for like matching elements for a good game plan. So I'm looking for any 2 cards that have a pair of matching elements. So this will allow me to get into 2 elements at the same time. So for example, we got Disorienting Landscape and then Land of Haunts and Embers. Both have Moon and Wind. Okay, well, both of those, Moon and Wind, are good against Sweden. Giving you that Explorer control, preventing the builds, is really nice. And that does double down with the effects of the cards themselves. They're both good at pushing and, preventing things from happening. Lands of Haunt and Embers, we could use to push out these guys here, which would then, prevent a Ravage from happening, let the Dahan survive, and then that would give us nice Explorer control going into the next turn. Okay, that's something. Disorienting Landscapes, removing a single Explorer and adding a Wild is insane. This is a card that I really want against Sweden. It solves an immediate problem, and it solves the next problem sometime down the line. So this is a card that I'm very excited about. But what other element pairs can we find? Let's see, I've got Sun Fire with Call to Bloodshed, and then Sunset Fire Flows across the land. Fire being a way that we can take aggression, and then Sun is, because of that 4 element cost, it can't be our central game plan, but it really is the icing on the cake. We have 4 cards with Sun here, so most combinations are going to give us the ability to flex into Sun in the future. So that's really interesting. That's really exciting. But the issue with that is that Call to Bloodshed, right, is a Dahan power, a little bit weaker against Sweden, right, because we might just start losing Dahan randomly to escalations. But if we can pull it off, it's a nice card. Going into Animal and then doing 1 damage, we can use the Animal power. Okay, we've already got a little animal here to push Dahan, and then we can deal damage with Dahan. So that's a way that we can win. Maybe if we picked up this Call to Bloodshed, combine it with this Carapace Land, right? That gives us a really nice earth animal playstyle. So that is a line of play that we could choose to go for. Song of Sanctity gives us explorer control for only 2 types of lands, but it does give us explorer control. And it gives us the water plant, okay, pairing up nicely with the thriving choke fungus. So that is an interesting option. But for some reason, it just feels less exciting than Disorienting Landscape. Like the extra part of it removes a blight versus adding a wild. And this Disorienting Landscape can be used in any land, whereas this has targeted restrictions. So between the two of these, that direct comparison, certainly going to care more about Disorienting Landscape. I haven't talked about Strong and Constant Currents, but this one is I'm just not interested in. Water and Earth are weaker against Sweden. Also, this only works on the coast, and right now we've got nothing going on the coast. So that doesn't seem like it's going to give us immediate value, and the long-term value seems a little bit lower as well. So I think I'm just going to write this card off. So yeah, let's start narrowing things down. There is a direct comparison between these two, and Disoriented Landscapes is just better. So I'm going to knock this guy off. Land of Haunted Embers, because it adds the blight, it's a lot less exciting to me. I've already got a solution for that Explore Town land, so it doesn't solve a problem that I need solved, so I'm going to knock that off. And then last, Call to Bloodshed, because of the restrictions with the Han against Sweden. I'm a little bit less excited about that, so we're going to knock this guy off as well, leaving us with Disorienting Landscapes and Sunset Fire Flows. Okay, so right-click one, left-click the other, and that's how you get 2. So that was a lot of talking, but where are we at now? So if I were to just pull all of these cards out, we can take a look at our element counter to see the different ways that we're going. Okay, so we're into Moon, okay, which is really nice. That'll allow us to prevent a lot of builds. And we're into Plant. Gaining more power cards in solo will allow us to really find a way to win the game. None of these cards here is like a win condition, but we can start digging through plants to start digging through more minors and majors until we can find a card that's actually going to win us the game. We do have 2 waters. It's a little bit weaker against Sweden because of that double blight, but right now we're looking at Moon and Plant is where we are right now. Sweet. So going into turn 2, where are we looking at? Well, we know that we're going to want a piece of the Nighttime Sky. This probably going to want to hit this with the Defend 3 from Carapace Land, which doesn't give us really any element combinations. If there was 2 elements here, we could consider picking up a 3rd element. But as is right now, we're not looking at anything like that. So instead, we're just going to gain another power card. I'm probably just going to pick up extra energy. This just gives us good value over the course of the entire game, and it gives us 2 flex elements. It just puts us in a really nice position before we want to start committing. This is the problem with Starlight, is that right now we don't have a ton of any one thing, and so we don't want to commit to anything yet. So I want to leave our options open, and you can do all kinds of things to leave your options open, pick up the extra energy, just kind of like these 3 turns all commit you to nothing. But then after these 3, no matter what presence you take, you're gonna have to make a decision. So we got a little bit of time, so let's milk it. Anyways, first thing that I'm gonna do is we need to have a sacred site here. So we're going to add a presence right here. Okay, then let's just gain another minor. And we already said that we're looking at Moon and Plant. We have a little bit of water going on. So Moon and Plant, we have no cards available to us with both Moon and Plant. In fact, there's only 1 Plant card and there's only 1 Moon card. So this could be a decision point. But what else do we got? We do have 2 water cards, okay? Just because water's not good doesn't mean I don't want to take it, right? It just means that it is not a priority. If I happen to pick up water along the way, then cool, right? We do have earth here, right? And that gives us earth plant. Okay, that's a nice little pairing. This gives us fire animal sun, which is a color combination that we're just not looking at. Had we taken this call to bloodshed, then this would be a really obvious pickup, right? Because that sets us up for 3 elements, and that's just a really nice way to win the game. And all 3 of those elements are the aggressive elements. So this would be good had we taken the other card, but this one we did not. Wind, we have 1 wind card, but because we're in moon, and moon and wind are kind of competing for the same space, this is a little bit less exciting. The fear doesn't really matter. Against Sweden specifically, the name of the game is just not losing early. Now, if we were against someone like England, where England, you need to constantly produce that fear, or Scotland, they have the most fear cards in the game, this fear ability looks a lot more exciting, right? Setting us up for a little bit more durability in the long term with that sun. But against Sweden, I think this card loses value. Similarly, Mesmerize Tranquility, making a town do 1 less damage, still blights. So this loses a lot of value. I think the only card really worth picking up is Shore Seethes. The Shore Seethes with Hatred. These names are awesome. So that lets me move a presence, and we have a range 0 defense, so we have to go this way. So that's the second one. And then the third one, I'm just going to gain another energy. Okay, so we're going to be at 6 energy when we pass. Now we can start to look at going into a major. For solo play, I always like to forget Boon of Reimagining. In multiplayer, if there's someone you want to target with this, then you may want to pitch one of these cards that's less good for you. But in solo, since we're doing that, we're going to get rid of this Boon of Reimagining when we go for a major next turn. Fast phase. Okay, we're going to prevent that from ravaging, and we're going to defend this for 3. Build that extra health. Explore. Okay. No beast. Coastal land with the Han. All right. That's actually really big, because now if we can hit this with a nice big fat defend, then right, this will kill everything in that land. The extra health is significant. No, it's not. No, we still get to kill everything. I was going to say, if this survived, then that opens us up to a Sweden escalation, but as is right now, it does not. Okay, so this does not ravage, and this all dies. And then we have a disease, and explore. We want jungles, sands, or coast. Okay, if we get hit with a wetlands or with a mountain, we're going to get an escalation. And we get sands. Great. Okay, we have no slow powers, and it's time for time passes. So this turn, I'm thinking I want to hit this with the defense 6, which we can do if we do a reclaim 1 and then play these 2 cards, right? Or if we happen to pick up another earth card, we could do that. So that's what I'm looking at right now. But first, let's pick up a major. We have plenty of energy, so we can play a major, and this will allow us to start picking our elements with a little bit more confidence. And what do we have? So we know that we like plants, we like moons, we have a little bit of earth, we do have water as well. Those are kind of the elements that we're strong in right now. So where does that put us? We do actually have some fire as well, right? Like we have a plant fire card here. So I like to try and find little 2-card combinations, or how I can threshold a major with the fewest cards possible. So these 2 cards together with 1 free plant element will give us a threshold. Okay, doing extra damage. Basically, it doubles the damage, right? Very strong. Strangling Firevine is a nice one. Also, it allows us to go into plant, okay, which is a very strong one. And then we could even flex into fire if we choose to go this route. And that'll just give us a little more damage, and that'll give us an actual game plan towards winning. Winds of Us, Rust and Atrophy is strongest against Sweden because downgrading is basically an extra defend 2 as opposed to a defend 1. So normally defend currents aren't as strong, but this is basically a defend 8 for 3 energy with the potential of repeating, which is nice. The problem, though, is that for the threshold to gain full value, we don't have any cards that exist that match its elements. In fact, I don't think any card has 2 elements. Wind, water, and animal. Yeah, we have no card that has even 2 of those elements, so this is really hard to threshold. Next, settle into hunting grounds. Okay, this is a nice one. It's not super strong, but you know, at worst, it's like 3 energy for 2 fear and 3 damage if we threshold it. But we do have this one card here, so we could add an animal, and that would be a way to do it. That's not bad, but we have really no other supporting cast. This guy, we have other plant cards, but we have no other animals for this one. And Accelerated Rot is also exciting, since we are already in 2 of the elements. That Sun, we've only got 1 card, and you know, you'd really want to have like a Sun plant card. But this is interesting as well. I think, especially with the way that this board is, Sands is range 1 from everything except for this mountains. This is going to be able to target 7 of the 8 lands and just always be useful. Accelerated Rot is just a little bit more narrow, I think. So I'm going to choose to take this and forget you. Okay, so that was 1. We get to move a presence. So I'm going to move this guy over here. And then I'm going to do that game plan I suggested earlier. We're going to use a Reclaim 1 to gain this back. Okay, with the intention of playing both of these cards. And then we are at 2 Earth, 2 Plant, so if we gain an element, we gain access to another, we gain access to a threshold. We already want to go into Plant because of Strangling Fire Vines, so let's just do it. Let's just go for some plants. Now, we could go top track, or we could go bottom track to pick up these plants. And I'm going to go for, let's see. I think I'm going to go for bottom track here. Because we're not playing Strangling Fire Vines immediately. Like, if we were to play this card right now, that would eat into our energy bank, and I'd be more likely to want to, you know, get 4 energy so we can play Strangling Fire Vines more. Because we're on a really cheat turn, we might be able to get away with just going for a clean 3 card plays. So I'm going to go here. We're just going to build up a Sacred Site. Gain this plant. And, okay, so I did a Reclaim 1, and I added a Presence. So yeah, we're going to be in a really good position. Let's hit this with the Defend 6. See what we got coming. Should land with the city and build there. Okay, thankfully we have this other city. So we're going to build this, and obviously we're just going to skip that Ravage again when it comes around. And that's definitely a land we're going to target with Strangling Fire Vines pretty soon. Push stuff from a land with Beast. Great. Just keep gathering into this one big death land. Gather a Dahan into a land with Dahan. And then defend 1 per. I don't want this. Because by doing this, it opens us up to escalations more. So I guess we're going to, if I do this, that gives me 2 potential lands for escalation. So now we're at a 50% chance of getting escalated on. I don't like that. That's really unfortunate. But, you know, there's nothing that we can't do here because there's nothing to do it. Nothing to do this, right? As I understand, you have to do it legally if it is possible. So we can only basically move Dahan between these 2 lands. And I want to kill the city. So, yeah, I guess we'll do that. Ravage in the wetlands. Build in the sands. And explore, yeah, mountains. Okay. We lose that to Han. Okay. So now we can gain a power card, and we can also get a Badlands and a Wilds and a Coastal Land. I think the Wilds is much more important to protect this here. So I'm going to put that there, and then we're going to gain a new card. Do we want to go for another major or a minor? I think I'm going to pick up one more major, and then we're probably going to ride it out with minors for a while. Looking to forget probably this one. Because now we are solidly into plant. Every single other card that we have has plant. We have a plant element here. So, like that's definitely our game plan. Yeah, let's take a look. All right, what do we got here? So we have two cards with plant. Now, interestingly, both of these also give us triple stack on Earth, which is not so exciting. Blazing Renewal. It does have two matching elements with Strangling Firevine, right? So that puts us in the same direction. It does have all three elements here with Shore Seas, so this will be a lot easier to threshold. This one matches all three elements with Carapace Land, so that's interesting. This is also a ton of damage. All right, with that threshold, we're looking at 11 damage, 2 fear. It's very strong, right? That's a great way to deal with this land. Vanish Softly. We do have a Moon Wind, but this doesn't produce any fear, so it's less exciting to me. And the way that Sweden plays, this is not nearly as important in my mind. Bloodrack Plague is a small amount of defense until you use it several times. It's also in 4 animals, and we only have 1 animal total. It's a lot less exciting. So really, it's between Blazing Renewal and Poison Land. Blazing Renewal requires us to lose some presence before we gain them back. So I'm going to go for Poison Land. With Poison Land, I can take 1 element, play it with Carapace Land, and then immediately threshold it. Okay, similar to how these guys are. Strangling Firevines and Shore Seas. So it's a very low investment for a really nice payoff. So we're going to do Poison Land. We're going to forget you. All right, time passes. So this turn, I could once again just go for, well, I can't do both of these actually because I don't have access to a Reclaim All. I can only reclaim 1. So I'll certainly defend the Double Blight as opposed to this guy. Probably just move my presence out there. So we'll probably do a Reclaim 1 on this, and then look to play some other cards. Maybe I will play Strangling Firevines to get some wilds down in these lands, kill off this town. It'll deal 2 damage. And that'll, having these wilds here will allow me to then build up to do even more damage in this land. So I think I'll do that. Okay, so we're going to reclaim 1. We're going to work our way towards a Reclaim All next. Okay, if we do something like this. Yeah, I think I want to work my way towards a Reclaim All. So we're going to go here. That'll give us 1 extra energy. And then I want to save this presence by moving it out. So I'm going to gain a minor. Okay, Fire Plant. We have Earth, Plant, Animal over with this guy. That's an Earth Animal. We already have the free plant. So these two is not a bad combination. In fact, I could use Gold's Allure, target this mountain, just gather everything in, and then maybe we'll throw down 1 more piece in the nighttime sky in this land. That'll save us 4 energy and largely accomplish the same thing. It does have decent elements. has the fire as well, right, which matters there. Yeah, so like if I were to play all 3 of these cards together, that would give me, I would need to have an earth element created, but that would but if I add that extra earth element, playing those 3 cards will threshold both of those majors. So I like that a lot. It's much more economical. Okay, so added a presence, gained a card, and reclaimed 1. That's our 3 growth options. Okay, so we're going to skip that. And Years of Little Rain. Hey, do we want to proliferate? The answer is always yes. We would need to... we have no waters in play, so we need to either pay 4 energy, which we certainly can do, or we can figure out a water card in order to proliferate. So... this would certainly be the candidate for a water card to forget, but we have so much energy that if I just pay 4, I go down to 5, I gain back up to 2, that's 7, so I could play both of these. Yeah, I'm just going to pay 4. For proliferate, we're going to go here. Okay, we revealed this, we gain an energy. We already know that we want to go into Earth next, so we can just pick that up, and we know we want to reclaim, so we'll just go there. Okay, Beast deals 2 damage. Very nice. And defend 1 per Dahan. That is significant here. Okay, so we Ravage. We're going to take a Blight. But 2 damage is going to be dealt. So one of these will die. One of them will survive. Kill the town. And then because of Sweden 5, we have to add a town to an adjacent land that does not have a building. Okay, we'll build a city and explore the coast. All right. Great. We can still use Gold's Allure here, though. And we can gather that guy, and let's say... I guess it could be wetlands or jungles next, so we don't know. So I'm just going to gather this guy out, and then we can add a Strife. No innates. Time passes. Okay. So now we're ready to start like slingshotting ourselves ahead. We've been playing Peace in the Nighttime Sky a ton. We're gonna play it again to deal with this land. But now we can really focus on winning, okay? Because this next turn, right, we're looking at a build. It's not going to be hard to defend this, especially now as we're getting into Earth. We could get hurt if we were to get a Jungle Explorer here, but actually, both Jungle and Wetlands, no matter which one comes up, we will escalate. So that is very unfortunate. Maybe we can use this disorienting landscapes just to push this guy out, and that way, if we hit the wetlands, we're protected. Or we could also use this just to add a wilds to this land, right? Both of those are fine. Let's see, we know... Okay, so first we're going to reclaim all, right? We know we're doing that. Because I want to play this piece in the Nighttime Sky. We will eventually add a presence here, so for range and targeting. Maybe we do this disorienting landscape. Okay, that'll give us access to this really nice moon innate. And then maybe we just do this so that way we can get the plants and the moons. We know that we're hitting a jungles or wetlands next for the next card, right? So this card gains a ton of value with that disease, right? Blocking off this or, right, solving one of those. If we, so I think this is what I'm going to do, right? So these are the 3 cards that we're going to want to play. If we want to play 3 cards, we would have to go here, right? We could gain another, because we were only at one action, right? So we can go here and here for our next two actions, which is perfectly fine. I think I like that, because we already looked at another 3-card combination with these 3 guys in order for us to hit all these thresholds. So we're going to want to hit those 3 cards anyways. And once we pick up this, then we can probably just go top track. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to add a presence here. Okay, we're going to choose to go for the extra card plays. Take the extra card plays, we get to move a presence. And so we can break up this triple stack. And, I don't know, we'll go... Actually, it doesn't really matter. I was going to say we could just get another presence into the sands, just so that way we can have both sands for strangling fire vines, which I think is fine this turn. Otherwise we'd be forced to do some other weird ones, and as is right now, we have full coverage with sacred sites at range 1, so this is not a bad turn to make that move. Okay, so we're going to skip this. And the question is, which of these do we want to protect? If we were to go here and protect this one from the escalation, that would be Explore Town, hitting for 7 damage. And we could defend it with a Carapace land, and we'd be fine, right? If we defended this one, this would be an Explorer Town with no Dahan to help us. Because we have the Carapace land, I think we want to protect our big stack. So I'm going to use this to add a Wilds here. Oh, look, one of the new ones. Terror spikes upwards. Okay, if you have any fear cards, resolve the first one now as if it was a terror level higher. So we get to use this one right now as a terror level 2 card. Okay, does nothing. That's fine. On each land with a Badlands or Beast and Building. No qualifying lands. Push half of the Dahan, rounded down, from the land with the most Dahan. So we have to push 1 Dahan out of this land. Okay. Ravage is skipped. Okay, build in the coast, and then explore. We would really like to have a jungles. Nice. Eats that, and we add that. Great. So now we get to add a disease and a Badlands, and I will do that here. Or disease and a Badlands, not a wild. Sorry. Great, we get to gain a power card, and we can move around some explorers. Let's see. I'll gain a power card first. We've already got our 2 nice majors that we want to center our game plan around. So I'm just going to start going for minors here. Some blight removal is nice because we're going to be adding our own blight. It has 2 matching elements as well. But this Rouse the Trees in Stone gives us 3 elements that we care about. So that's really nice. And then this Seer Anger also gives us 2 elements that we care about. So those are a bunch of great options. This Defend we're just not going to take. We already have our Earth Innate. We have Carapace Land. So all 3 of these are great choices. But I like the idea of Rouse the Trees in Stone. We can use that in this land to solve this land next turn. So that's going to be the pick. Gives us all the elements we want. It's just perfect for us. Now, as far as our Moon Innate, no incredible place to use it. I'm going to... I'm just going to gather this guy this way. There's really not a ton of value from doing that, but having a land go from 1 invader down to 0 is a significant difference. So that's what we're going to do. All right, and this is going to be the turn where we really start to pop off. So we're going to be at 7 energy for the turn after 2, and that means that we could play these 3, threshold both of these powers. We have a Earth Innate to defend 5, solve this land. We can do something like Poison Land, we'll do like 11 damage here. We could Strangling Fire Vines to kill these guys off here. Gold's Alert, collect everything in here for a future turn. I did pick up Rouse the Trees. If we play this instead of this, we lose this threshold without gaining much. Maybe pick up a fire, go that way. But the gaining the extra fire will give me 2 damage, whereas playing the other card gives me an extra 4 damage. So 2 damage and 2 damage versus 4 damage. Because all of our problems are really consolidated, I want to do, I think just this will be a little bit better. And of course I could do this and then still pick up the fire and still get the extra 2 damage. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to go fire here. So we're going to add a presence here. Okay, so adding a presence is 1. Gaining the extra card play is the next. I'm going to choose to just drag this guy over 1 step. If we choose to blight this land, we'll still have a presence there. So that'll be nice. And then for our third growth option, okay, we added a presence. We did that. And then I think we've got all the cards we could want, but we're going to get a little tight on energy. So I'm going to gain 1 more energy. Sweet. Let's give him the defend 5. 5. Not that's going to be relevant, but... Okay, and let's go here. 2 or more towns. Push a town to a land without a town. In each land. Ooh. Oh, dang. So if I take a look all the way at the bottom for this Dahan portion, it means that the Dahan get to attack first. So I'm going to use one of my pushes to go here, because I know that that's going to be picked off and we'll be okay. And then the other one, I'm going to go here so that we don't get hit with a Ravage. 1 fear per board with disease, yes. And then 2 damage to Dahan and land with disease, we're okay. No fear cards, so let's Ravage. Dahan attack first, but only deal 1 damage. So those 2 guys are going to die. And then build in the jungle, we have a disease. Jungle Sands. All right, let us have some fun. So what do we want to do here? For our innates, we have gaining a power card. Okay, we're going to do that last. And then we have 2 damage. And then we have some high damage stuff here. And we have the Gather as well. So the Gather, I'm certainly going to target here. But I think we're going to kill off all these explorers with a Strangling Fire Vines first. So we're going to target from this sand into this jungles. Okay, that will destroy all explorers. Okay, add a wilds to the jungle and the originating sands. And then get to deal damage based on that. Then we can gather this guy in here and then just strife off a town. Okay, we have it's going to be 14 damage because we add a blight. So before I do that, I'm going to choose to use my fire. I'm going to do it here. Because of this Badlands, the explorer would go first, kill off a Dahan before dying himself. So by using the fire innate here, we functionally save a Dahan. So 1 fear, kill that guy. And then I'm going to target the sands with the poison land. So we're going to do a fear, do 7 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to add a blight, which destroys a presence. Kill all the Dahan, there aren't any. And then for each blight that is now present, 1 fear and 4 more damage. So 1, 2, 3, and 1 explorer just fell off. So that's the 4th damage. Okay, it would be sweet if we had the moon innate here and we could just gather all this out, but we know we can't get too greedy. Then last, we get to gain a power card. Once again, I've got my win condition here. We're just going to stick with miners that we can reliably play. So what do we got? Sky Stretches is nice just to be able to do a slow to fast. That could close out a game for us. Because right now, actually, we could just slow to fast, destroy all these buildings, and then just win. Right, if we do a Sky Stretches straight into a Poison Land, we're already at Terror level 2, so that'll just win us the game. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, do we have the energy for it? So first we're going to do a Reclaim All. Boom, boom. Requires 4 energy. Okay, so we're going to add a Presence. It's our second option. And then I guess this doesn't really matter what we do. I'm just going to gain another energy. Okay, we will Sky Stretches, targeting ourselves with the Poison Land. It's a fear, and then 7 damage, and then add a Blight. So let's see. Okay. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the ruling is, if this was the one that like adds more buildings to the board. I don't think that would make us win, because I'm pretty sure that win or loss is checked at the end of the resolution of the entire action, not like in the middle of the action, and that moment where we've added or we've destroyed everything, but we haven't like added the blight, flipped the blight card yet. I think that's how it works, but I'm not exactly certain. But we get to circumvent it this time around. We just get a clean victory. So anyways, I think you guys, or I don't think, I hope you guys found this video interesting. You know, Starlight is a really flexible spirit. It allows you to really do anything that you want. And the challenge of this spirit is really just trying to figure out how we're actually going to go about winning the game. Because from the start of the game, there is no game plan. We wound up finding our way into an earth, fire, plant build. You know, basically exactly what this card does. This guy, right? These two are perfect element cards this game. But yeah, Starlight's a ton of fun. You can play him in any situation. You have a great matchup against every single adversary. You can really do anything you want with this guy. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that this guy's not too intimidating for you. You know, he's just a ton of fun. A favorite spirit by so many. Have yourself a great day.